you prefer to just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
if you're addressing people, if you're addressing the students,
right.
you'll want to address them. And
Right.
you'll see like when I start,
you'll turn it
I'm going to address the people.
Yeah, gotcha.
But when we're talking for sure, it's with us. Ideally, one day I'll have the infrastructure where there's a camera here.
Right. And a camera there.
So we're looking at each other. Then the other thing too is a clock in the background, because when I work with people like you whose time is very valuable,
right.
And I know we only have so much time, like it's not I'm rushing you, it's how do I make sure I respect what he needs to get done, right? Whereas when I was speaking with the dean of business, I checked my watch and I had a couple people reach out to me like, dude, you checked your watch in conversation? It's like, I'm sorry.
I was a nitpicky. You can't look at the comments. That's you know what I mean?
It's respect for the people I'm speaking with, right? I don't want to come across like, and of course you understand. Oh, yeah. Because you're the one who has to get out of here and do something different.
Yeah, but like I'm also chill. Like I can speak for 40 minutes if we really have to. You know what I mean? Like it's so fun. I got studying to do tonight. Yeah. So
exactly. And on that note, welcome to today's extra special episode of Pursuit of Motion. Hello, everybody. So as I mentioned last time, I'm really looking to understand the perspectives of people that I find that are really doing creative, engaging things that have to do with leadership. And Mr. Jacob Cruchet here embodies that role. And he does so from the position of the students. You have us in mind as the president of the student union. So Jacob, what inspired you to stand up and represent the students?
First off, thanks so much for having me. I absolutely love what you're doing with the podcast, Pursuit of Motion. It's incredible stuff. I watched the one with our professor that we share, Igor, Dr. S. So thanks for having me. What kind of led me to want to do, I'll start with what I want, like wanting to do student unionism stuff in general. Back in high school, did your school have like a student activity council or something like that? Like nothing like that? So ours did. It was a group that it didn't do the advocacy necessarily, but it did like some of the event plan, you know what I mean? Like did the event planning, those sorts of things. And so I got involved with that. And through that, nobody was wanting to be president that year. And so I just kind of like was my teacher, she was trying to find somebody and she just was like, Jacob, do you want to do it? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. So I got involved kind of as like president of my high school student activity council. And after that, when I was on there, we got the opportunity to advocate to our school board for our students for high school. And it was in that process that I really noticed that there's blind spots. There's a lot of people who are trying to do a lot of good things, especially within administrations. A lot of these people have blind spots on student perspective. Or sometimes they're not prioritizing what students need because they're prioritizing, what they think is best for the university, down the road. At the end of the day, a lot of people, we share a lot of values, students and administrators and things that sort of thing. We want what's best for our schools. But a lot of the time, there's a disagreement on what is best. And there's a lot of, I call them blind spots in terms of what people, miss about what is important for students and what students care about. So that's what I noticed when I was in high school. And I came to university, came to StFX, and I decided I wanted to keep standing up for students in the best way that I could. So for me, that meant getting involved as an arts senator on Senate in my second year. And Senate is the academic body that determines new courses, changes to programs. And so we got started as a student senator, essentially, advocating for students on that. And then that kind of naturally led into, okay, what's the next step and how I can kind of amplify student voices. And that was the position 2 years ago as vice president of academics, where I was still on Senate. And after that, I thought president was a step up on the ladder. And I thought it was a way I could make the most difference for students here at StFX, as I can kind of try to tackle some of the issues that I see on campus, and also, some of the issues that I wanted to help the student union evolve around as well.
That's super interesting. And I want to get back to issues, but it seems like you're saying your leadership capacity was really born from necessity. They needed a leader to step up,
Yeah.
and you felt like this is the moment, with some prompting from someone who knows, who understands, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. I was scared shitless. You know what I mean? I hope I can swear. I don't know if I can swear.
You feel comfortable, yeah.
And like, especially in high school, because I had no experience at all. Planning events, there's a lot of event planning in high school. And and my teacher was like, we need somebody. So I did it, and I loved it. And I really recognized kind of, how important it is to have student impact and influence and be in those conversations. And kind of was history from there. So I started getting more involved into university. Yeah.
And so what drew you to university? Was that part of the plan, and was StFX part of the plan, or how'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you the same question after this as well. So my brother went here. He just graduated last year. He was graduated from the engineering program. Well, not technically. He's doing the 4-year here, 2-year at Dow sort of a thing. And so he's, 18 months older than I am. And, the next year after he went to university, I was like, all right, where am I? Where am I going to go? And it just so happened that I had toured the campus here when he was touring the campus. So I was kind of just tagged along with him. And it was one of the few university campuses that I'd actually seen in person. And I mean, we know what the campus here looks like. It was a beautiful campus, right? And I actually think that was one of the reasons. I mean, that plus small class sizes. Small class sizes is such a benefit. But a big part of it was honestly it being super aesthetically pleasing, and I felt like I was in a movie the entire time. And so when it came down to like a couple of schools, I was like, I've been to StFX. My brother's already there. I like the small class sizes. I like the program that I'm in, which is public policy and governance. And a kind of combination of those things, I was like, this is the right choice for me. What about you? What was yours? What brought you here?
I mean, this place is gorgeous.
Yeah.
You're very right about that. What brought me here is I had 3 years of full-time work after high school.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that I couldn't possibly continue to navigate the world as with such blind spots, as you mentioned earlier. Right. There were significant things that I felt I cannot continue to operate, make decisions without cultivating that faculty of reason. You have a duty to become as educated as you're capable of becoming. Right. And it came pretty clear that I wasn't there yet. Yeah. High school wasn't enough for that.
I found, like, it's funny you say that, because I found some of the most interesting and probably some of the most things that led to the most development for me was my work experience. Kind of as I was in high school still, you know what I mean? But I worked as a line chef at this place called the Bent Anchor, which was like a beach bar kind of restaurant. And when I'm hiring people now, whenever I see line chef experience or something like that, I immediately like, this is something that they're going to have a quality of being able to handle stress,
pressure,
right? And that's stuff that you don't always learn, especially you learn pressure. There's a lot of that in university, but communication, those sorts of things, I think you can only get through kind of work experience. Yeah.
Where are you from, Jacob?
Outside Ottawa. So I grew up in a very, very small town called Palmer Rapids, 800 people.
Wow.
We had a corner store, and that was it. That was pretty much it.
You had 800 people. You guys had student government. Oh my goodness.
No, so
Alberta, man.
It's funny you say that. I went to school about 20 minutes away. 2,000 people in that town, Barry's Bay, and that was the way I went to high school, and that's where there's a little student government and stuff like that. But I mean, moral of the story, really, really rural area. It was kind of like cottage country. There's lots of lakes, a lot of trees. A really beautiful place to grow up. And funny enough, moving out to Antigonish was almost like a step up in terms of how many people are here, which is hilarious because I know most people always feel like they're leaving the city to go, you know what I mean? But it was actually, for me, the inverse.
My experience is identical. This place is way larger than where I grew up from.
Yeah.
So very much as there are some things that really leave Antigonish as not a city, there's still so much here that I'm perfectly content.
What was the community you grew up in?
It's called High Level. High Level? It's the furthest community in Alberta before the territories, furthest north.
Oh, okay.
3,000 people, so a little larger, but the isolation is more significant than really anywhere else that I've discussed, at least, below the territories, in that your nearest communities are over 100 kilometers away. We didn't get to paint a picture, we got a Tim Hortons in 2014.
Yeah.
Right, which is the sort of
that
thing
might have been the
imagine.
Exact same year that our town got a Tim Hortons.
Well, there you
actually.
go. There
That's
you
really
go.
funny.
So,
yeah.
We come from a similar
and it was
world.
The hot shit when it showed up too.
Yes.
Right? Everyone loved it. Yeah.
I had the great pleasure of being hired as like the opening staff. Right. I was 13 and I had the opportunity to learn amongst people. You said pressure. When they opened the Tim Hortons in my area, a significant proportion of the people who worked there were brought in from overseas. Yeah. And all of them had at least a decade experience in fast food before they were even allowed to immigrate to Canada for the position. So it's like you got some 13-year-old learning amongst these people who've been managing fast food for a decade.
Right?
So, but that's that opportunity to learn as well. Right?
The restaurant industry, because I also worked as a bartender for a little while, is such a high pressure industry. Like, it's insane. Even fast food, even, like retail restaurants, like no matter the kind of restaurant, like you go talk to somebody there and they're probably not going to be able to talk to you because they're going to be like running back and forth, you know what I mean? Doing something, right? So my mom worked at Tim Hortons as well. So I thought that was a little bit of a funny connection. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the Canadian experience for sure.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. So you came to university with public policy and governance. Now, you and I have shared political science classes, I believe, all 4 years. I think we have. Might have. So what drove you to choose public policy over poli-sci? Because I went with business. And there are two very distinct sections of education, whereas public policy, it's separate from political science in that it doesn't contain the sort of theory, but it is more practical, which a lot of people complain about poli-sci. So how did you make that? Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I in high school, I was a big political theory guy. You know what I mean? Like that was what I really, really enjoyed learning about and kind of speaking about. I've told to a lot of people, I think my dream job would be to talk about politics all day. Literally would be my dream job. If I could make a living off that, I wouldn't care how much money. That would be what I did. And public policy and governance, part of my decision to go was, one, I got a scholarship, completely up front. Thank you. Thanks. And that was a big thing for me because that meant that, going to university, it was going to be a very different experience than if I didn't get a scholarship. And ultimately that was a big part of the decision. And then another kind of really big part of that decision was that the Mulroney Institute and the public policy and governance program, I knew was going to offer me something that I was looking for that was a little bit different from normal poli-sci courses. And that was the ability to look at policy as it kind of comes through in like a bill or something like that, and be able to pick through and take out bits. This is something that's good. This is something that's less good. You know what I mean? Being able to kind of analyze like omnibus bills and looking at specific policy that's passing in a way that I think political science generally doesn't really concern itself as much with. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a little bit more broad, most of poli-sci. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but yeah.
For you, it's about application.
Yeah, it was about application, and it was about recognizing what makes good policy, right? And if you were to ask me what makes good policy, I would say a policy that is extremely well consulted, right? So you know the communities that you're in, and you're kind of asking and working with people. And then also it's policy that is adoptable. It's policy that is going to get adopted by government. It's policy that is easier to implement than another policy option. Because there's so many brilliant ideas out there that never, ever, ever, ever happen because there's just no way the government's going to do it. So I think so that's part of what the school teaches you, right? It teaches you how to be practical, and it teaches you how to consult different groups to know what's actually going to work best with folks. And it's different every single time. It's never the same thing. It's I think that was what drew me there, was being able to analyze it, being able to say like, all right, this is, this government politically or for one or reason or the other, I might not agree with, but maybe they're doing policy right? Maybe the way they're actually approaching the process is correct. I found that entire thing really, really fascinating. I thought PGov was the only program, maybe in all of Canada, I don't know if there's any like it, that are kind of undergraduate public policy and governance that was going to equip me with the ability to like actually dig into what is good policy in a way that I don't think political science or like philosophy would do.
You know, and not to throw any shade to my political science friends, but I've seen on LinkedIn that PGov students are hired out of university. Not all of them, but I've seen quite a few. Oh, wow, I started my job at, you know, X. I'm not going to put anybody out there, but it seems as though it really is a rational path when it comes to choosing your education, because a lot of people choose things that they leave the career or leave and try and enter a career and recognize there is nothing for them.
And I mean, a big part of that is that the Mulroney Institute and the Public Policy and Governance program makes a big effort to like actually, you know, nudge people into these jobs, right? Like every single PGov student who's in public policy and governance, and for students who aren't in it but still want to take the course, there's this internship course that PGov students have to take, and a part of it is a summer internship somewhere. It can be paid, it can be unpaid. They have, you know, funding to help students if they're not getting paid in it, and even if they are getting paid in it. I think that's honestly like, it just gives you work experience, which is really helpful when you're trying to get a job. A lot of students just end up graduating and then working in the place they had the internship, right? It's such a but it's an interesting conversation, right? Because I don't know, have you heard much discussion about the difference between whether university should equip people for jobs or whether it should be a place to just kind of, you know, grow your critical thinking and that sort of a thing? Because I know that's a big debate right now as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I fall on the less popular side of the spectrum in that I think education is a means and an end. I think if you are planning to become smarter, again, like I said, cultivate your faculties of reason so that you can get a job, it might not be the right approach, because you know what? An electrician cultivates their faculties of reason as well, and they've got a job at the end. You know, whereas... And again, I'm not going to throw shade at any of our peers, but there are plenty of things here that, you know what, if you're passionate about anthropology, for example, you know, like David Yuval Harari's book, Sapiens, it's a great book. It's something that I learned a lot from, and it's something I appreciated, but it's not something I've taken and applied in my life. It's something that helped me understand human nature better, but it's not something that helps me be a better employee or start a business. And so I think that when you're coming to university, you need that calculation of, am I going there to get a job or am I going to learn something? And I think one of the major issues is that right now, societally, it's commonly believed that it's just the next step you should take and that it makes your odds of getting a job better. But you know what? That might be one of the things that could do with revisiting in terms of culture.
Well, there's a big shift in the 80s, 90s, that, I don't know, have you ever heard the phrase like the knowledge economy? So it started being used in the 80s and 90s. And it related to the idea of like the economic side of what universities can offer and what like highly educated countries can offer. But part of that whole discourse as well was it started to move away from universities as just being a place for people to go to pursue learning, to pursue their critical thinking, you know, in the classics, that sort of stuff. And whether purposefully, probably purposely for some people, not purposely from others, it shifted into university as a place that you're going to go so that you can contribute to the economy, so that you can get jobs, you know what I mean? And it's really interesting is this, like in Nova Scotia right now and in Canada right now, I think all around the world, there's been a noticeable change in policy that has to do with universities, especially coming from governments, that is trying to push universities to focus more on different industries and different jobs that need more workers. Nursing is a really, really great example of it. Teaching, right? And on the one hand, it's beneficial because it leads to more nurses and more teachers. But on the other hand, like what is happening to university as it was originally intended? You know what I mean? Like just to be a place to grow and to learn. Well, now it seems like everything is always going to be working towards, you know, your job right after that, which is fine. But, you know, I think it's an interesting conversation, right, that has to be had. Yeah,
I agree. And I've come to a point in my university career, especially as a fourth year, and I wonder if you'll resonate in that everyone around me is intelligent. Not everyone around me is smart. You know, everybody knows a few things because we've been through 4 years of stress testing, of pushing your boundaries. Hopefully, we've all changed to some degree through 4 years of being exposed to classic literature and to thinkers that, you know, wouldn't have translated when we were, you know, yay high, right? To those not watching, to when we were young, right? Yeah, I have a bad habit of pointing to things and not making it clear to the listeners. I almost wonder to what degree university should be something that people think maybe 3 times about joining. I wonder if a lot of the overinflation that's occurred and then we can move back into the student union where it comes to resource availability and things becoming more expensive. To what degree is that because you have a significant proportion of first years playing Clash Royale in the front seat of their classroom instead of engaging with the material because it's not the environment that they're actually meant to be in from their temperament? I wonder what sort of stock you would put into that.
Yeah, I mean, like I still strongly believe that it's incredibly beneficial to go to university in terms of like looking at, you know, career paths going forwards and that sort of a thing. I think that if you can get into university, if you can do it without racking up enormous amounts of debt, which is getting harder. And I will say just today, we just put out a campaign to increase student financial aid in Nova Scotia because there's so many students right now. It hasn't increased since 2018. Right now, you can get $100 a week essentially as a Nova Scotia student, and in 2018, the cost of living was a lot different than it is now, right? So I mean, we can talk about that whole thing, but I think if you can go to university and you can end up with a degree and you don't have these huge amounts of debt, I do think it's an incredibly useful thing because it is tied to better job market possibilities. You know, maybe I don't know if it's the same, although I did see that it's actually a really similar amount of people graduating university now are getting jobs 2 years out than there were around like year 2000. So like it seems like it's a similar amount, which I was actually a little bit surprised with, but is good news. You know what I mean?
But then the number of students joining has increased though. So
it's per capita though. Yeah, it's like the stat I see. I don't remember where. Oh, I pulled it from the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission, which is kind of like a quasi-province body that does a lot of kind of auditing of degrees and stuff and making sure that things are up to par. They do data collection as well. And one of the things they were reporting on was job market, essentially data around job market after graduation for students. And this one was like per capita, you know, how many students are finding employment, you know, 2 years out. Now, it doesn't talk about the quality of employment, which I don't know if that's changed, but the numbers are the same as they were 20 years ago. But kind of back to, you know, the what we were talking about initially, I think that for us, for the student union, for students in general, cost of living is making things a lot more difficult. And it's something that I've identified within the student union as one of the areas that we need to focus in the most, right? We've got a couple levers that we can pull, that we can make life a little bit easier for students. And I think we need to continue to invest in those levers. Kevin's Corner, the Food Resource Center on campus, I think is one of them. And we're constantly looking for ways to expand it. Because right now, 90 students a day use Kevin's Corner, which is a lot, right, for a small campus like this. And right now we're financially, you know what I mean, like we're doing fine, but we need to continue to get small donations. We need to continue to get medium-sized donations, and then we need to increase our capacity because listen, food insecurity is a problem that isn't going to go away. And as it looks at things right now, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, right? So it means more students are going to be coming to it. So that's one of them. But I also think, and this has to do more with the university, but looking at how we can better support students who are facing financial difficulty with scholarships, because a lot of scholarships right now, there are some scholarships that students get that are really, really, really specific to certain criteria. Like you've got to be a woman from the small town, you know what I mean, in like, let's say a small town like Saskatchewan, and then there'll be a scholarship for you. And it's because, you know, the person that established that scholarship, that donated the money or the endowment or whatever, has that specific criteria. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that some years they can't even give it out. Yeah. Right? Because there isn't always a woman applying from that small town, right? So some of these things, like how can we direct some of the funds to students who actually, to make it more needs-based, I think is a really interesting one. Yeah, like that's where some of the thinking that I have is at. But I'm interested, like, to hear, you know, what your opinion is on ways that students, you know what I mean, things that the student union can do, things that the university can do, to better support students that are, you know, in need on campus. It's something I'm always trying to think about.
Yeah, I think it's it's really a deterrent when you are applying for bursaries and scholarships and stuff. And I mean, you're talking about people crippled by debt to go to university. You're looking at one right now. You know, when you apply for it and you see the amount of bursaries that say you can only apply for this, you are only eligible for this if you are. I think for sure that's something that it is discouraging for some students. Now, there are, of course, plenty of
general ones.
So it's not that those entirely comprise the list, but for sure it's something I've picked up on as well. And I want to make clear from my earlier point as well, I believe anybody who wants an education should get one. Regardless of finance. I couldn't afford to get the education. I'm here now getting it. I think figure it out. I think it's super important. It's the point I think I was making was that if you had less people joining the education who were only here because they believe it to be the next step in the progression of life rather than something they're passionate of, that's where the overinflation, the bubble might ease, where costs may go down in terms of provision on campus. But
no, and I think I agree with you. Like, I think I'll always encourage students to come to university, but we need trades workers, right? We need people who are actually going to do a lot of the work. You know, there's so much aging infrastructure around, even here on campus. Like, it's not for everybody, right? And it shouldn't be like, you shouldn't feel obligated like you have to go to university. You should be able. This is me, my student union hat coming off, you know what I mean? But our economy should support people equally as well who are just doing regular, everyday, you know, trades work. Because like, honestly, that's the backbone of kind of what's going on as a country. I think that there needs to be way, 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 way more investment. And I think if there is, people might not feel like they've got to spend, you know, $150,000 on a university degree. You know, if we better support some of the other like occupations and stuff that we got going on. It's a side note, you know what I mean? But definitely an opinion of mine for sure. Yeah.
So in speaking about the student union and these levers that you've mentioned, what are some of the things you mentioned? A campaign that came out just yesterday?
Just today.
Today, wow. So please tell me about it.
Yeah, so part of the Students' Union, the U on campus, we're part of two external advocacy organizations. One is Students Nova Scotia, and it's a provincial advocacy organization that advocates for post-secondary students here in the province. And the other is CASA, or the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, which does the same thing on the federal level. Part of what SNS is doing this year, and part of what, by connection, the U is doing, is pushing for Nova Scotia to invest more in student financial aid through the programs that they have for Nova Scotians right now, because they don't have a general financial aid one. They have one for residents of Nova Scotia. And we want them to do two things. One is raise the $100 a week maximum to $300 a week maximum, because it hasn't increased since 2018. The second, and you're going to find this really interesting, I think. You can only, I want to correct myself. I think it's actually $200 a week maximum right now, and we want to increase it to $300. I want to make sure I have that information right. You can only work the equivalent of $100 a week. You can only make $100 a week before Nova Scotia starts taking away the student financial aid that you have, which means that's equivalent to 6 hours or so at minimum wage. So you can only work around 6 hours a week before they start taking away how much financial aid you get. So on the one hand, there's all this unmet need. There's all this money that students need that they can't get because $200 is the max. And on the other hand, we can't make up the difference ourselves. So the other thing that we're advocating is increasing, what they call the maximum study period earnings from $100 a week to $200 a week. So that students don't feel like they've got to literally either, decide whether they want to work or decide if they want to get their student financial aid. Because that's a terrible thing for the economy. We want people to work, right? We need that. So those are the two asks that are part of this campaign right now. And it's being run by StFX, our students union, by Cape Breton Students Union, by St. Mary's Students Union, and by Acadia Students Union. And we're all kind of like pushing as this being kind of a big ask. So that's what's going on at the provincial level right now. Yeah.
Yeah, the incentive structure there is ugly.
It's a little odd, right?
Because you're encouraging students not to work in order to get that financial. Yeah. You'd almost expect they would have a matching situation where, if, of course, with limits, you can't earn 10 grand a week, but let's say you work the 20 hours, which is insane for a student to work. And there are plenty of people who do. Yeah. And there are plenty of us who do it with extracurriculars. I'm sure you're there with you. Yeah. And I can't count the hours I spend on music and podcasts and everything else. So we all have the things we invest our time in. But if you are a student who is in poor financial situation and is able to work 20 hours at Tim Hortons, I don't understand why the government wouldn't want to match.
I know.
That's the sort of thing where you should be commending those people above.
Well, and on the one hand, right, like it's helpful for the local economy. And on the other hand, it's going to keep more students in Nova Scotia after they graduate, right? Because more people will be working. They'll already have a relationship with employers. Yeah, it's going to overall, and these are both goals of the provincial government. It's a big barrier for students working right now. So I think that's almost the part of that campaign that I really think needs to change is let students work. You know what I mean? Before you start clawing back from it.
You said this is in collaboration with 3 other student unions?
Yeah.
How were you able to bring everyone together? How did this work?
So it's not an initiative that's led by our student union. It's an initiative that is led by Students Nova Scotia, which is an advocacy group that the 4 of us student unions are members of.
So they were able to bring the student unions together.
And every single year in November, it's almost always in November, but last year was in March, there's something called Advo Week, where we're essentially 2 delegates from each of these student unions, I'll be doing it in November soon, head to Halifax and basically just take meetings with all political parties that are willing to meet, staffers with MLAs, and basically tell them these are the issues that students have. And I think it's one of these groups, Students Nova Scotia, CASA, they punch above their weight. They're running on relatively small budgets. And at the end of the day, they end up securing 60 meetings with different, ministers in government or different staffers. And I'd say every year, every 2 years at least, there's a massive win that we get. A really good example is we got permanent funding for mental health established at Healthy Minds Nova Scotia, and also for sexual violence prevention through our efforts at Advocacy Week in previous years. So I can talk all day about Students Nova Scotia and CASA because, oh my God, they take it and they take what the recommendations, what good policy will be, and they bring it to the people who are willing to make change. And more times than not, we actually see change get made, which is really cool. So that's part of so that's who it's through. So Students Nova Scotia, not through us. Yeah.
So Jacob, I want to ask you then, as a young man who's from humble beginnings, small town, in terms of leadership, it really seems like, you're good for the job. It seems like apart from being put in the position at a younger age, you're very articulate. You seem to gravitate towards representing people. How do you deal with the weight of representing a whole school, especially when you're talking about speaking with MLAs and being a part of this larger movement? How do you deal with that?
And this isn't something that I uniquely struggle with. It's something that if you talk to any student union executive probably not just at StFX, but in other student unions around the province and the country and the world probably, imposter syndrome is the name of the game. Every single student, especially when we're walking, I'm not gonna generalize for everybody, but when we're, especially taking office and we're beginning these roles, I'll be really honest, you're suddenly thrust into such an adult environment, especially when you're meeting with a minister or something like that. And there's those moments where you think to yourself, you go like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Sorry to swear, but then you kind of come to this moment of enlightenment where you realize that, my job is to represent students. There's nobody that's going to do that aside from students themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that I am a student and the fact that I am this young is what's giving me the expertise on this subject matter, right? That's the moment where I think a lot of the weight gets lifted. But I'll be honest, it's a stressful job for sure, especially when, something comes through or there's something that happens on campus and you have to respond to it. But it's rewarding. I will say it's rewarding. It's something that you get to see wins, little things that you think are helping in the community happen, once a week, something like that, right? You get to help a student. I'll give an example. In the summer, we usually have these, not in the summer, but we usually have these advocate positions hired for conduct advocates and academic advocates for if the university accuses you of plagiarizing your work, right? You're like, I didn't plagiarize my work. Who can I go to for help? An example is the academic advocate that we usually have employed. And they'll walk you through the process on how to write a good letter and all that sort of stuff. But in the summer, we don't have them hired yet in the summer. So it ends up being the student union exec that helps students out with that sort of a thing. But it's so rewarding when you get a message from a student that's like, hey, and these are long, it's a month, 2-month long process always. And at the end of it, you met with them in the first month, and then maybe even after a certain point, they felt able to kind of do it themselves. But then you get an email back at the end of the month, and they're like, my grade appeal went through, and it got changed. I'm able to stay in the program. It's little moments like that make, the entire thing worth it 100%.
Do you find through your position, you are exposed to a lot more of the pain that people go through? I'd imagine that as the figurehead of student government, a significant proportion of students who come and speak to you are coming with problems. Yeah. They're probably not coming to you to tell you how great everything is going. Yeah. So do you what role does empathy play in your position?
It's a good question. It's everything, right? I think if I were to, put up certain pillars to my approach to leadership, empathy is one of the central ones, right? And you're right. During the day, whenever there's a student coming to me, sometimes they're, they just have a cool idea, right? Those are always super fun to hear. But a lot of times these are people in shitty situations, that they feel like they can't get out of, and they're turning to the student union because they feel like they're the, the last resort, people that are going to try to stick up and have their back, right? So you do get a lot of people who are going through problems. But I think that's kind of just politics and, in the world of the world where you can make change to better help people is going to be a world where you're running into a lot of people that need to be helped, right? And at the end of the day, I think the positives outweigh the negatives of that, right? Being able to see things that are getting better. I think it's easier to push aside, some of the negative things of, oh, my world, things seem really shitty, right? Everywhere. But I definitely think it's those little moments where you notice that there's differences being made that make it all worth it. And then at the end of the day, they kind of, make you think, okay, well, yeah, that was a really exhausting time. Maybe at the end of, this really busy week, I'm like, oh, I need a break. But there's always, really good moments where you're like, oh, that felt really good. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes, the job doable. But empathy is a big part of it, for sure. I don't think you can be somebody that's trying to help people. Truly, I think that you'll do a really bad job of helping people unless you can be empathetic. right? Like, it's a simple statement, but I think that it's a true one, right? That you need to be able to, you're never going to know what someone's going through. You're never going to know completely what someone's going through, unless they're going through something that was really similar to what you went through as well. But God, you can try to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And you can at least listen. You can listen and you can trust what they're saying. That's a really big part of it, is don't always be doubting. When someone's coming to you with a problem, especially in the world of student unionism, they're usually coming to you with a problem because they couldn't find anywhere else to go, right? So I think trusting people is always a really big thing. And sometimes that'll bite you in the ass, but I think more often than not, it's worth it. So I'll still do it. Trust and empathy go a long, long way in these things. Yeah.
So it's great that you picked up that empathy is a significant element of leadership, because my biggest question I want to learn from you is what are your values as a leader?
Yeah. It's hard to like think about what they are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, empathy is a big one, right? And this is something that I'll be completely open right now. I'm starting to realize that at times I need to change this about myself, is I give people the benefit of the doubt a lot. And it's really easy for me to do. Sometimes it's really helpful, you know what I mean? And sometimes like it's what's necessary to fix things. But even if that's something like, even if that comes back to bite me and I can handle that, when you're working with a team and you're giving people the benefit of the doubt, and a behavior or something is bothering somebody else, it's suddenly time for you to change your approach to giving people the benefit of the doubt, because you gotta do something about it. You know what I mean? So I think empathy, and those are big values for me. That's a really big one. Another value I genuinely think, and this doesn't just apply to like the student voice, I'll frame it that way, but trusting people that are affected by things, trusting their opinion as really important information to know. For student unionism, like the importance of the student voice, right? And I'll speak to the university right now, which is I know you'll have President Haken on in due time, and we work a lot together. But to continue to remind these guys that at the end of the day, student input is incredibly important to this entire process. It's important to the university experience. And it goes the same with it doesn't have to be a student, right? If you're dealing with a rural community and they've got some kind of issue and you're some sort of expert that's coming in, you know what I mean? You best believe the best thing that you should be doing is listening to the opinions of the people that are most affected by stuff, right? And here on campus, that is students. And that's why a lot of the time, students are the ones that are coming through with solutions to problems that university administrators, faculty members would have never even thought of, right? So that's a really core part of my values as a leader. Empathy, trusting the people who are affected by things. And then I think another big part is having good solutions, not necessarily quick solutions. This is coming from kind of my public policy and governance background now. And it's something that actually there's a lot of debate around, because sometimes you can't arrive at the best solution possible for a problem. And in the process of trying to, you end up wasting time, and the problem gets worse in the meantime. You know what I mean? Sometimes incremental changes are the way to go. But I'm a firm believer that the more time you think about something and the more time you put in researching it, the more time that you kind of spend talking to people, the better, whatever solution you're going to come up with is. And also the better chances that you're coming up with a solution that's actually going to work, that's going to be implemented, that people are going to like the sound of. That's a big part of anything politics related as well. I think there's a balance there, but I definitely lean toward the side of like trusting evidence. You know what I mean? Trusting the evidence and using that to inform what your positions are and stuff is a sure way to make sure that you have better policy. So I think that's a value of mine as well. So the three of those are what's coming off the top of my head at the moment. Empathy, trusting evidence, and then also trusting the people that are most affected by problems. I think when you combine the three of those things, no, let me throw in a fourth one. Fourth one is being able to have difficult conversations with people. Because if you are super, super empathetic, but you have a backbone, you're going to be a pushover, right? And a pushover is not somebody that can get things done. And it's something that I've had to have a lot of growth over the last year through, right? Because I said I used to give people a lot more benefit of the doubt than I do now. And my world was happy. I was a happy person. But sometimes you need to be able to tell someone that, that what's going on here needs to change, right? Whether that's a team member, whether that is talking about leadership, whether that's a team member, or whether it's someone at the university, whether it's somebody within the province. You need to have a backbone. You need to essentially know when it's time to speak up, right? And usually that means when it's starting to affect other people. And when your own inaction is going to continue to perpetuate that, or even make the problem worse. So I think that that's a really, really important third one that I'll be completely honest with you, I'm still trying to get better at. Right? I'm still trying to get better at having those difficult conversations because nobody likes to have them, right? You walk in and you go like, hey, like, I want to talk to you about this behavior of yours. It's been somehow bothering other team members, or it has been handicapping a certain goal of ours. It's a very difficult thing that has to be done, but you got to be able to live in that uncomfortableness for a little while, or else or a lot's going to slip through. Yeah.
I guess I have two questions about that.
Yeah.
I guess the first isn't a question. It's more of a pontification.
Yeah, I was here. Yeah.
Resilience is what it sounds like you're talking about. And it's very much a muscle that needs to be worked out.
Yeah.
You need to put yourself in that situation where you have the guts to say the uncomfortable thing. And the more you do it, you practice.
That's 100% true.
And you find that's been your experience through student government.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you. It's the same thing with like social skills, right? It's a muscle that you can train.
Yes.
Right. And sitting in the uncomfortableness of a conversation is a muscle that needs to be trained. I think I'm in the process of training it. You know what I mean?
And so to follow up with that, post an uncomfortable conversation, post confrontation, how do you make space for grace to return with the relationship? Because if you sit me down and say, Adnan, you're destructive to our community. Let's say, I need you to change these things. And I have respect for you and your position and your insights. And so I listen to you. There are a lot of people who will develop resentment or disagree and so how do you ensure the relationship exists beyond the point of confrontation?
I'll start with context because I think there's two parts of this. One of them I think is context of when it's happening. And then the other part I'll get to. So for the context of it, I think the approach that you're going to take is going to be very different depending on kind of what this is and what's happening. If you're telling a university administrator that the way that they're doing things is wrong, I think there's less follow-up that needs to happen for that relationship because they recognize that this is your job. You know what I mean? Like when you walk into a room as a student advocate, and you say that there's an issue, there's a lot less hard feelings because they recognize that they know why you're there.
It's not personal.
It's not personal, right? It's literally not personal. So I think following up is less important there, even though it's still an important thing. Now, in terms of with your team that you're working with every single day, a big part of it is making sure that your team members trust you beforehand. So that when you do come to them with an issue, whereas the immediate reaction is still probably going to be misunderstanding, or they're going to be, pissed off for a little bit, that they can fall back to, well, I don't think this guy is trying to be malicious in any way, right? I know he's been there for me in the past, sort of a thing. And I'm hoping to put a little bit of value into what he's saying because of that. I think that's a really big part that gets neglected sometimes, is making sure that your team trusts you and knows that you're well-intentioned and that sort of thing, because then they're less likely to take things personally, right? And when you do say something that they are going to take personally, they're probably going to internalize it and think about it and think, okay, well, if he's saying this, well, maybe there is a problem going on. The second part of all this is follow-up, right? And I think that always having a conversation with somebody and then letting them kind of think about it a little bit, and then the next time you see them in the day, pulling them aside and being like, listen, I know I was hard on you earlier, or I know that, what we just talked about, it seems like I'm just, trying to get mad at you or anything, but, I really, don't mean that. I do mean what I said, you know what I mean? but like, I'm sorry if, it made you feel a certain way. I don't think there's any harm in that, because I think that it's okay to, apologize for any negative feelings that people are having because of an interaction you happened. And I don't think that necessarily has to take away from the fact that the reason you're having, the substance of the conversation, what needs to change, is all still true. So having a follow-up at another time, kind of being like, listen, like, I'm sorry that we had to have that interaction, is important, even though it doesn't always seem necessary. I think more often than not is a good thing to do, because you don't know, like, it's really easy to live and have things build up, resentment, as you said, right? Like, and to just like that guy was such an asshole, like, you know what I mean? They don't want to get me at all. And just having a little follow-up conversation, it won't fix all that, right? But it might subside it a little bit. No. So that's my thoughts on that. What about you? I imagine you've had to have some tough conversations in your life. You know what I mean? And maybe you're the same boat as me, where you're still learning how to do that. But for you, if you can think back to a time that you've had a difficult conversation with somebody, what was the, don't tell me because I'm sure it's confidential, you know what I mean? But like, in general, what was the experience like? And then afterwards, when you're interacting with that person, you know what I mean? Do you notice, you know what I mean? Because I definitely noticed that things are a little bit less, sunshine and rainbows than before.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I mean, there's something about the dynamics between two people where one, whether they're, I mean, in my position generally, there isn't a hierarchy where I've been voted in as the president of the union. And not to say that you don't have a certain like innate leadership quality, but the sort of position would be different for me. But I think my number one biggest thing is I want to try and understand their position, even if I can't empathize with it, even if I entirely disagree. I often make practice of reiterating what they said, because if you don't think I understand you, you are going to have a real difficult time wanting to hear what I have to say, for sure.
It's conflict resolution 101.
Yeah, 100%. It's understanding that. And you know what? I've come to the conclusion, just like you said, imposter syndrome. Yeah. I've come to the conclusion that post-conflict, we're both experiencing the same lack of comfort around the other. Yeah. And I believe very thoroughly in surety, in confidence, in that and this is an actual coined Adnan phrase. Okay. 4/5 of presenting is presentation. How do you approach things? And so if you and I got into a conflict, and every time beyond the actual conversation, you see me, I'm smiling, I ask how you're doing, I attempt graciousness, at least I put an active effort into it, and you hear other people around you have heard me say positive things about you, it's you're rebuilding the bridge in an organic fashion. And I think it comes down to make sure they understand that you understand them. And then allow your natural kindness, I think.
I really like that.
That's and I think that one place where, and I'm not sure if it's just the word you used or if it's actually your approach to conflict resolution, but the apology portion of what you said is where I don't resonate. I find that, I mean, when I'm in the wrong, not only will I apologize, I will plead for your forgiveness. Right. Like I recognize that I am very fallible. Right. But when it comes to, me confronting your behavior and you getting upset about it, I will not I will say and it's a bad habit of mine, but I'll say something along the lines of like, I'm sorry you feel that. I find that for your own mental health, you have to guard apologies, because if you're walking around apologizing for everything, there's healthy responsibility, and then there's taking on the burden of pain that's just not yours. Yeah, and I think I mean, honestly, I think this is like the middle ground here is probably somewhere that I need to grow to, right? Like I think in terms of repairing relationships, apologizing not for the content of what you said and still agreeing, like this was an important thing, but apologizing maybe for
maybe apology is not the best word, but going over and checking in with them afterwards to make sure that they're okay is still a really important part. But to your point, I think that like sometimes you don't even have time for that, right? And if you're in a high energy environment and you're in an environment where something's going on and there's a lot of stress going on and you have to get mad at somebody for something, you know what I mean? Like if you're still thinking like, all right, oh, I really need to go and chat with that person and make them feel better right now. Sometimes like it would be nice to not have to think about that, right? But I do think that in general, like, and I guess perhaps apology is not the right word, but I think the right word is like checking in with them afterwards, or it doesn't have to be right after. It can be a day after, it can be a few hours after, just to be like, hey, like, listen, I just wanted to make sure that you're doing okay, sort of a thing. Like we had the conversation yesterday, and like I just want to make sure we're good. You know what I mean? Like that sort of a thing. Because I think that's maybe a better way of looking at it than looking at it as, hey, I'm sorry that I had this conversation with you. You know what I mean? Or I'm like that sort of a thing. Because I do agree that might even undermine what you said in the first place. Yeah.
I agree that it's reflective of your character that a day or two later you would follow up and check in, and that would be huge for repairing a relationship because it shows you aren't this mistake.
Yeah.
You aren't that. This is just something we needed to address.
We needed to fix it. Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I want to ask you before we finish up some personal stuff, but let's put one last student union question out there.
Do it. Hit me.
What is the biggest thing you guys are working on, and what do you want students to know you guys are doing for that?
Okay. I'm going to answer this in an interesting way. The biggest thing, and it's not just here at StFX, but it's also all around Canada, student unions are facing everywhere, and not just student unions, is the struggle with engagement, with engaging students, where they are, having students interested in what they're doing. And it doesn't have to just be student union, you're having students interested in like different events that are going on campus. Post-COVID, there's been a decline. It's straight up, there's been a decline. There's been a decline in people who are wanting to get out and be social. There's been a decline in people who are even like swiping up on your story. It's all across Canada, and we're trying to fix it here at StFX. So engagement's a big focus. And to me, engagement is a really tricky concept. It kind of means everything, right? You can use the word engagement in literally anything. But to me, I think it can boil down to your engagement for the student union. Our engagement, in person with students, our presence on campus, our presence online, and our presence, not our presence at events, basically students' enjoyment and experience at student union events. I think that if you can address all three of those, or at least focus in on all three of those, that's your key to improving engagement. It's probably, it's one of the 4 big things we're working on this year. So I want to talk to students for a moment. I would say get involved, because getting involved is such an incredible way to enrich your experience on campus. It's an incredible way to make a difference in the community. It's also an incredible way to meet people and to have fun. And one of the biggest things that we're having problems with, and the university is having problems with, and the community is having problems with, is less people wanting to get involved in things. I think perhaps the key is societies, and really continuing to promote societies, and what we have, the structure of societies that we have here on campus, is maybe one of the best ways to get students involved in things, whether that's someone getting involved with the Women in Business Society, whether that's somebody getting involved with the Film Society, with like the Pre-Law Society. Like I think like all of that helps, you know what I mean? Because it leads to people who are more engaged, who are more interested in issues that are going on, who are talking to people, who are going out to events. These are the things that make StFX what StFX is.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to make sure that we don't lose that. So it's a big focus on that. I think engagement is one of the biggest issues we're facing. And for what we're trying to do about it, it's a lot of being more present on campus. So we're trying to, I mentioned those tables earlier, trying to, in a conversation that we had before this podcast, trying to book, tables to talk to students on campus, trying to get out to meal hall to talk to students on campus, being more present, and then being more present digitally. We just did a whole aesthetics review and kind of revamped all our Instagram aesthetics, because that's another big part. Most students interact with us online these days, right? They see a post from the Students' Union or something like that.
You'd be hard-pressed not to notice that of the last 4 years, the U has never put out more content. That's so obvious.
I appreciate that.
You guys are doing so good.
I really appreciate it, because it's been a big goal of ours, is like putting out more content and putting out quality content as well. You know what I mean? Okay, but the third piece, right? I mentioned presence on campus, presence online. The third piece is events and enjoyment at events. And this is such a difficult nut to crack, because for somebody to have a great time, let's use a wing night, for example. Wing nights, I think, are a staple of StFX. And it's a staple of the student union through the end. Wing nights are going to be a blast no matter what, if you get 300 students there, if it's close to selling out. The moment that you start having less students at a wing night or less students at any event, the enjoyment for everybody goes down. I think it's particularly true for like night out events. You know what I mean? Like the less people at a bar, the less people at a club, the less kind of fun and how much energy there is. So there's a very difficult relationship, which is to get more engagement, you need people to have more fun. And for people to have more fun, one of the best ways to get people to have more fun is to have more people at the event. But how are you going to do that?
It's circular.
It's circular, right? There's ways that you can try to get more people out. There's ways you can try to get more people to have fun. But that's one of the key problems that we're facing. Like, how do we do that? How do we bring people out? Because when people come out, they have a great time. You know what I mean? So if you have any thoughts on that, you know, that's the name of the game right now for a lot of engagement sort of things. But it's definitely an issue that we're like trying to puzzle with, for sure, and trying to figure out like what's the best move here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it is.
It is very tough, and especially things are getting more expensive. I mean, and you know what? In terms of the inn, and this is a very personal thing.
Yeah, no, let's hear it.
I'm allergic to gluten, and so I can't have the wings.
Yeah,
and gluten allergies are through the roof.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's a growing thing proportionally.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll look into see.
I'll
look into see if there's any way that we can do like some like breadless.
Breadless, yeah. With any luck, we can make some real changes.
I can chat with Shania, our bar manager.
100%. Yeah, I do love the Inn. It is one of my favorite bars here. I'll be performing there Friday night, which is exciting. Hosting the Halloween costume for the second year in a row.
I've got tickets.
It's nice. Yeah, nice. What are you going as?
I've got a couple costumes right now. I've got one. Have you seen Stranger Things?
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Harrington in the Scoops Ahoy costume. I have one of those, which is really funny. Have you seen the Bear? The chef show? Carmen?
Yeah. You have
I think I'm probably going to do Carmen from the Bear again. And then have you seen The Boys? The show The Boys? Thinking about doing the Deep from The Boys.
That's hilarious.
That's really, I just need an octopus.
Very funny.
Right?
Yeah,
so I don't know which of the three is going to make an appearance. You know what I mean? But I've got a strange feeling it's going to be, I think it'll be Carmi. I really like that costume. Yeah.
Anyway, look, I saw you as Carmi last year. It's a good look. Not to expose the usage of. Hey, man, you got to use.
What about you? What are you doing as?
Last year, last year was kind of the peak of my buzz in terms of like things I was doing, and so I thought right now, because I'm I am not a divisive figure, but there is certainly division around how people feel about me, and so I wanted to step out and sort of give my haters something to talk about.
Okay.
So my girlfriend went as a queen, I went as a king, so I had a big crown.
Yes,
and a cape
I remember this. This was last year.
Yeah. And it was, the pictures are on my Instagram. It was great. It's my favorite costume. But this year I said, you know what? Any person with any level of humility, if you're willing to show up as the king for Halloween, this year I'm showing up as Donkey from Shrek.
Nice.
And Emma's the dragon.
Nice.
So you know what? If you're going to be the king, you got to be willing to beat ass as well. And
that's
frankly,
really funny.
I'm not above it. That's a
good costume.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Donkey costume is an interesting one. So to finish off, what does Jacob's future look like? I know you mentioned you were interested.
Don't ask me these tough questions, man.
I understand that, and I mean, I have a podcast, so you're talking to someone who also loves to talk and would love to find a way to turn it into a career. But, you know, I'm not so sure podcasters are really out there doing the sort of good that people like you and I could do in other organizations. So what does Jacob's future look like?
I mean, there's nothing certain yet. But I think I want to pursue more school. I think I'll get a master's or try to go for a master's or try to get into law school. Big differences between the two, and I don't know which one I'm going to go for yet. But after that, I genuinely think I'll see where it takes me. But if I wanted to do something right now, it would be to talk about politics and to talk about issues in the world all day and be able to make a living off of it. My God, that would be incredible. It would be such a fun job. I'm saying this now and I'm going to end up doing it or something, and it's going to be like the worst thing ever. But that's where I'd like to go. But the problem is there's no career path for that, right? Like what's the career path for like being somebody who has a podcast or being somebody who has like a late night show, right? Like there's no like real, except for like journalism, maybe, right? But like that's like, that would kind of require me to do a bit of a 180. So built up some expertise. Maybe that's expertise in a certain area of law. Maybe that's expertise in a certain realm of political science. And see if I can somehow use that to further some sort of career as talking for a living. You know what I mean? It would be a lot of fun. Not a politician, though. I don't want to be a politician. I'll tell you that.
No aspirations for public service?
No, maybe. Like I respect the public service a lot and a lot of what they do. But I don't know. I think maybe I feel like my life is too regimented. You know what I mean? Like I'd like to be my own boss of some kind one day. We'll see. You know what I mean? But probably not public service. Even though PGov, shout out PGov, would set me up pretty well for that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? Having heard you speak for the last 4 years about political science related things, I think you and I very often find ourselves disagreeing, yet I've never once been in a position where I said, that was dumb.
Oh, I appreciate Jacob, it. I really appreciate it.
You are an intensely bright guy. And I think being articulate is one of the things that really makes that such a pleasurable thing to be around. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
You know what? I'd say you're a pretty articulate guy as well. Thanks, you're doing this entire podcast thing and you're absolutely killing it. So, all the best to you going forward with this. I'm really looking forward to seeing this President Haken one, whenever that one comes out.
November 7th.
November 7th when you'll be filming. So that'll be super, super fun. It was a pleasure being here. It was a pleasure being here on the podcast. Pursuit of Motion. Let's do
100%. It. Before we cap off, we're going to do a first ever in the Pursuit of Motion series. We're going to show the people Jacob's footwear because these boots are incredible. Pull up the boots, man. Dang. Oh, my goodness.
Dang, dude.
With the red leather. You got to be kidding me.
That's what I'm saying. Value Village, $15. Go find yourself a pair.
Pursuit of Motion, baby.
Have a good one, guys.